Today, we're talking about strategic human resource management, but we're going to look at it through a really specific lens. We're zooming in on how real strategic HR is all about mastering the factors inside your own organization. It's about knowing exactly which levers you can pull to steer the ship, no matter how stormy the seas get.
So let's just get right into it. When I say HR, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Is it paperwork? Compliance? The department you only talk to when something's gone wrong? For a long, long time, that's pretty much been the reputation. But what if I told you that was just a tiny, tiny piece of the puzzle? What if HR's real job is to be one of the most powerful strategic tools a company actually has? And this is the core idea right here. This definition frames strategic HRM, let's call it SHRM, not as some kind of support function, but as a real driving force. And the most important word in there? Planned. It's all about intentionally designing your HR activities, who you hire, how you develop them, how you organize them, all with one single purpose: to crush your biggest organizational goals. It means being proactive, not reactive. Okay, so here's our game plan. First up, we'll look at the two environments HR has to deal with. Then we'll zoom right in on those internal factors you can actually control. From there, we get to the really juicy stuff, the core strategic tensions every leader has to navigate. We're going to unpack two big ones: fit versus flexibility and commitment versus control. And then we'll wrap it all up with how you can perform this strategic balancing act. To really get a handle on strategic HR, let's use a metaphor. Just imagine your organization is a ship, and it's out there sailing on this huge, unpredictable ocean. Well, that ocean, that's the external environment. And the ship itself, that's your internal environment. So this slide really draws a clear line in the sand. You can't control the ocean, right? You can't change economic conditions, you can't stop new laws from being passed, or halt some major tech disruption. You can only react. But you have immense control over your ship. You set the culture, you manage union relations, you literally write the policies. So strategic HR is all about making your ship as strong, as fast, and as resilient as possible so you can handle whatever that ocean decides to throw at you. All right, let's step off the deck and go inside the ship. What are the actual levers that a strategic leader can pull? What are those controllable internal factors that really truly matter? Here are the big four. First, you've got organizational culture, the unspoken rules, the shared values. Then you have your relationships with trade unions, which can shape everything. You've got the company's own objectives and policies. That's the rule book you get to write yourself. And finally, professional bodies that set the standards. Every single one of these is a lever that you can adjust. And this is just such a powerful example of these levers in action. Take culture. A company like the Tata conglomerate has this incredibly simple but powerful philosophy: get the best people and set them free. Now, that's not a rule in some dusty handbook. It's a deeply held belief that guides every single HR decision. It's a strategic choice about how to manage people to get the best results. So, you know what levers you can pull. But here's the thing. Pulling them isn't simple. And this is where we get to the heart of advanced strategic HR. It's not about finding easy answers. It's about navigating these complex, often competing ideas, what researchers sometimes call paradoxes or tensions. And this right here, this is probably the single most important shift in thinking we're going to talk about. The best leaders, they don't go looking for some best practice to just copy and paste. They understand that there are these fundamental, unavoidable trade-offs when you're managing people. Their genius is in balancing these opposing forces to perfectly fit their strategy and their environment. So we're going to focus on two of the absolute biggest tensions that every single organization has to face. First, there's that constant pull between fit and flexibility. And second, there's the huge choice between a commitment strategy and a control strategy. Let's start by breaking down that first one. This first puzzle is a total classic. So, do you build a perfectly tuned, highly optimized system for the world as it is today? That's what we call fit. Or do you build a system that's ready to change, to pivot at a moment's notice for the world of tomorrow? That's flexibility. What it really boils down to is the end goal. A fit strategy is all about perfection and consistency. Every HR practice, hiring, training, pay, is just tightly aligned with a very clear, stable business plan. But a flexibility strategy? It prioritizes being resilient. The goal isn't to create a perfect system for today, but an adaptable one that can handle whatever comes next. And here's the kicker. Neither one is automatically better. as this research points out, flexibility is incredibly valuable when your ocean is stormy, in dynamic, fast-changing industries. But in stable, predictable industries, that same flexibility can actually be a huge waste of resources. It's like paying for an expensive capability you never actually use. Which, of course, leads to the obvious question. So which one should you choose? And the answer, as we're about to see with our next tension, is that maybe choosing is the wrong way to think about it in the first place. Okay, on to our second big tension. This one's all about how you manage your people's behavior. Do you build your foundation on trust, or do you build it on rules? This is the fundamental choice between a commitment strategy and a control strategy. Each of these strategies is built on a totally different assumption about what makes people tick. A commitment strategy basically says, hey, if we empower people and show them we trust them, their dedication will soar, and that's what drives amazing performance. A control strategy assumes the opposite, that top performance comes from clarity and efficiency, which you get through really clear roles and supervision. And for a long time, the evidence on this seemed totally clear. There was this famous study back in 1994 of steel mini mills, and it found that the mills using commitment-based systems just blew the control-based ones out of the water. They were more productive, they wasted less material, and they kept their people longer. I mean, case closed, right? Well, if it were that simple, we wouldn't be calling it attention, would we? The early research really did make commitment look like the magic bullet, the one-size-fits-all best practice. But as our understanding has gotten more sophisticated, the picture has become a whole lot more interesting.
And this is the modern and, frankly, kind of revolutionary insight. More recent studies have found that the highest performing companies weren't the ones that chose commitment or control. They were the ones that skillfully blended both. They figured out how to create systems that empower employees while also making sure there's discipline and clear processes. They just refuse to see it as an either-or choice.
So all of this brings us right back to our ship. If strategy isn't about finding one perfect answer, then what is it? Well, it's about becoming a master of the balancing act. It's about being the captain who knows exactly how to adjust the sails and the rudder to navigate these constant competing forces. So, how do you actually do this? You can think about it in 4 steps. First, you got to scan the horizon. Is your ocean calm or is it stormy? Second, know your own ship. What are your internal levers, like culture and policy? Third, and this is so important, you have to acknowledge the tensions. Don't pretend they're not there. And finally, you balance them intentionally. Make conscious choices about where you need to be on that spectrum right now for your strategy in your market. So look, if you take away just one single thing from all this, let it be this. Strategic human resource management isn't a hunt for some magical best practice that you can just copy and paste. It is the sophisticated, sometimes difficult, but absolutely essential work of managing the internal paradoxes that define every single organization. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. In our world today, with AI, with remote and hybrid work, with a global talent pool, are these fundamental tensions, fit versus flexibility, commitment versus control, are they getting any easier to manage? Or are the tools just changing while the captain's challenge remains exactly the same?